Well, Eric, joining us now for more is retired U.S. Army Lieutenant Colonel Robert McGinnis. Colonel McGinnis, thank you for joining us. And so how does allowing Ukraine to strike Russia with U.S.-supplied weapons change the Ukraine-Russia war?
Well, Arthel is probably going to enrage Putin, which, of course, is problematic. Keep in mind, the intelligence community, according to the New York Times, recently said that Ukraine is losing the war. Now, we know that Zelensky, as you just reported, has come to the United States weeks ago with a victory plan. And allegedly, when he met with President Biden, he made it very clear that using ATACMS and other long-range missiles, such as what the French and the UK just released, will be helpful. Now, unfortunately, it's a possibility that this could likely broaden the war. Now, keep in mind, the Chinese are allegedly providing lethal aid now to Russia. The Iranians have, and of course, as you just reported, the North Koreans have sent upward to 10,000 troops to Russia, allegedly that are going to be in the eastern provinces helping in the fight against Kursk. So you have a host of issues here. Allowing them to use HIMARS ATACMS that can reach 188 miles inside of Russia could be incredibly problematic.
Well, also, here's another question. Is there enough time for Ukraine to take advantage of these long-range missiles in the next 64 days, enough to put Russia and the North Koreans on their heels?
Unlikely. ATACMS are not going to make a major difference, quite frankly. What it will do is put Mr. Trump, as he assumes the presidency, in a much worse situation because the Russians, like I said, have been enraged. And so you have a series of things that have happened, Arthel. Mr. Biden, in fact, thought that the war in Ukraine was going to bolster our industrial base. It didn't. And he also was hoping that it would degrade the Russian military. Unfortunately, what Vladimir Putin has done is upgrade his industrial base to produce more munitions. And he is, just increasing his selective service to bring more people into the ranks, to include, of course, the North Koreans. So you have the makings of a much broader war. So we need to be incredibly careful here about allowing Zelensky's so-called victory plan to go forward in a way that could just rob us all of our future freedoms.
I want to go to Leon Panetta right now, the former defense secretary, former CIA director, who told Sky News not too long ago, and Leon, it's always good to have you, but I was intrigued by these comments about Vladimir Putin. When Putin is cornered, and that makes him dangerous, because when you corner a bully can be very dangerous. He's at that stage right now.
No, there's no question, Neil. At this point, Putin is fighting a two-front war. One in Ukraine and one in Moscow. He's got hardliners who are criticizing him for the way this war is going. And it's pretty clear that the tide of war has really changed in Ukraine and that Putin is losing. So as a result of that, he is feeling cornered. And when he's cornered, Putin will strike out, as bullies will, when they're basically prevented from using any other options. He is in a place where he doesn't have a lot of places to go, and that's what makes him very dangerous right now.
All right, folks, grab a drink and settle in, because we're about to deep dive into this whole crazy situation in Ukraine.
Yeah.
Things have been escalating there for a while now, and the U.S. has been walking this tightrope of, trying to help out Ukraine without, totally provoking Putin.
Right.
But things just get a whole lot more complicated.
Definitely more intense.
So we've got two news articles here, one from the New York Times and one from Fox News.
Okay.
And what's interesting is they actually agree on the core facts.
Oh, wow.
Which is kind of surprising these days, right?
Yeah, that is pretty rare.
So the big news is that Ukraine used these U.S.-made missiles called ATACMS to hit an ammo depot inside Russia. And this is a huge freaking deal because it's the first time they've done this.
Big time escalation.
Yeah, this is major escalation.
Exactly. Those ATACMS are serious weapons.
Yeah, what are those things exactly?
They're long-range missiles. Super accurate, and that can really pack a punch.
So why was the U.S. so hesitant to give Ukraine these missiles in the first place?
Well, they've been worried about triggering a wider war. You know, nobody wants to see this thing turn into World War III.
Right.
It's a delicate balance.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
But something must have changed because now they are giving them okay.
Yeah, things have shifted.
So what was it?
Both articles are pointing to North Korea.
What?
They've apparently sent troops to help Russia.
Well, North Korea's involved now.
Yep.
Yeah,
it's a real mess.
This is getting out of control.
That's a complicated issue.
Okay, so you've got North Korea siding with Russia. How does that even make sense?
Well, North Korea and Russia have been getting closer lately.
Okay.
They both see the U.S. as the enemy, and Russia is desperate for allies right now.
Right.
So they're kind of teaming up.
Against the West.
Pretty much.
So North Korea joins Team Russia, and suddenly the U.S. is okay with Ukraine hitting targets inside Russia.
Right.
I don't quite follow the logic there.
It's all about power dynamics. The U.S. sees North Korea's involvement as a major escalation, and they're responding in kind.
So they're basically saying,
Two can play at that game.
got it.
It's like a really dangerous game of chicken.
Okay, so it already sounds pretty terrifying, but to make matters worse, the articles mention another twist. Trump is back in the White House.
Oh, wow.
And get this, he wants to end the war quickly.
It seems the newly elected President Trump is aiming for a swift resolution to the conflict.
Okay, so that's crazy on like a million different levels. First of all, Trump's back.
Yeah.
And he wants to make peace. How does that even work?
Well, that's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
Right.
Trump's foreign policy is notoriously unpredictable.
That's putting it mildly.
Will he continue supporting Ukraine like Biden did?
Yeah.
Or will he try to pressure them into making a deal with Russia?
Yeah, who knows?
Nobody knows, and that uncertainty is freaking everyone out.
Yeah, I bet. And to top it all off, Putin has apparently lowered Russia's threshold for using nuclear weapons.
Really?
You think that's a coincidence?
I doubt it. The timing seems pretty suspicious.
Right.
Like a direct response to the U.S. giving Ukraine those ATACMS.
Okay, so this is where it gets really interesting.
Definitely.
And scary as hell.
Yeah.
What does Putin lowering the nuclear threshold actually mean? Like, what does that even look like?
It's basically a power play, you know? Like he's saying, don't push me or I might just do something drastic.
So is he bluffing or is this a legitimate threat?
It's tough to say Putin is a master manipulator.
Right.
He could be trying to scare everyone, but the fact that he's even talking about nukes is a huge red flag. It shows how high the stakes are getting.
It's a total shit show.
That's for sure. Yeah, it's a total shit show.
So we've got Ukraine firing off these long-range missiles, North Korea joining the party, Trump back in the White House calling the shots, and Putin threatening to go nuclear. Where does this leave Ukraine in all of this?
Well, on the one hand, those ATACMS give them some serious firepower. You know, it could be a game changer.
Right, but it's risky too, right?
Oh, absolutely. This could really piss Russia off.
Yeah.
They might retaliate big time.
It's a gamble.
It is a gamble.
And what about the people in Ukraine? I mean, how are they reacting to all of this?
It's got to be terrifying.
Yeah.
Imagine living with that constant fear, not knowing if a bomb is...
Man, that's heavy.
It's not just the physical danger either. It's the psychological trauma, you know, the displacement, being separated from loved ones.
Yeah.
This war is ripping apart families and communities.
So what's being done to help?
Well, there are a lot of organizations working to provide aid, shelter, medical care, whatever they can.
Okay.
The international community is also stepping up with financial assistance and sanctions against Russia.
So they're trying to
Trying to put pressure on them to stop this mad...
But it feels like a drop in the bucket compared to the scale of the suffering.
Yeah, it's a long road ahead, that's for sure.
Yeah.
But every little bit helps, you know?
Right.
Every donation, every voice raised in support, it shows the Ukrainian people that they're not alone, that the world gives a shit.
Yeah. It's like that saying, even the smallest act of kindness can change the world, or something like that.
Exactly.
So all this craziness, all this uncertainty, let's get to the point. Where do we go from here?
Honestly, it's hard to say. We're in uncharted territory here.
Right.
So many wild cards.
With Trump back in the mix and Putin making threats.
Yeah, it's a recipe for chaos.
Chaos is right. Okay, so we've got all these players with their own agendas and motives, but if you had to bet, what's the most likely outcome here?
If I had to guess, I'd say we're headed for a long, bloody stalemate.
Okay.
Neither side seems willing to back down, and those ATACMS could just make the fighting even more intense.
So more of the same, but with even higher stakes.
Pretty much.
Okay, what about negotiations? Is there any chance of a peaceful solution at this point?
It's possible, sure, but it seems unlikely anytime soon.
Yeah.
Both sides are dug in, and there's zero trust between them. Plus, with Trump back in charge, who knows what his approach to negotiate.
Right. He's the ultimate wild card. But let's say hypothetically that negotiations do happen. What would be the main sticking point?
Well, first you've got the issue of territory.
Okay.
Russia has annexed Crimea and parts of eastern Ukraine, and they're not going to give that up.
Right.
Ukraine obviously wants all of its land back.
Of course.
Then there's the whole security guarantee issue. Ukraine wants assurances that Russia won't invade again, and Russia wants guarantees that NATO won't expand eastward.
Yeah. So they both want to feel safe.
Exactly. But they don't trust each other.
Yes, that's a problem.
It's a recipe for a long and messy negotiation process.
And to make things even more complicated, Ukraine will probably demand that Russia pays for all the damage they've caused.
Oh, absolutely. They'll want reparations, which could be billions, even trillions of dollars.
And Russia's economy is already in the toilet because of the sanctions.
Yeah, so even if they wanted to pay, it's not like they have a ton of cash on.
So what you're saying is the future of Ukraine, maybe even the whole damn world, hinges on decisions that haven't been made yet. This is some seriously heavy shit.
You could say that again. We're in uncharted territory, and the stakes couldn't be higher. It's a total clusterfuck.
Well, that's just fucking great.
Yeah.
I need another drink. Okay, so we've talked about all the political stuff and the military move, but let's not forget about the people you know, the actual people living through this nightmare.
Right.
What's it like for everyday Ukrainians?
It's gotta be hell on earth.
Yeah.
Imagine living with that constant fear, never knowing if a bomb's gonna drop on your head, or if you'll even have food on the table tomorrow.
Yeah, I can't even imagine.
And it's not just the physical danger, you know?
Right?
It's the psychological trauma, the displacement, being separated from loved ones.
Yeah.
I mean, this war is ripping apart families and communities.
It's heartbreaking.
It really is.
So what's being done to help these people?
Well, there are a lot of organizations working their asses off to provide aid, shelter, medical care, you know, whatever they can. The international community is also stepping up with financial assistance and sanctions against Russia.
So they're trying to
put pressure on them to stop this madness.
But it still feels like a drop in the bucket, you know? Could be compared to the scale of the suffering.
Yeah, it's a long road ahead for sure.
Yeah.
But every little bit helps.
Right.
Every donation, every voice raised in support, it all makes a difference. It shows the Ukrainian people that they're not alone.
Yeah, that the world cares.
Exactly.
It's like that saying, right?
Yeah.
Even the smallest act of kindness can change the world, or something like that.
Something like that.
Yeah.
You know, honestly, what gives me the most hope is the resilience of the Ukrainian people.
Okay.
I mean, their determination to fight back, to defend their country, to rebuild their lives.
Yeah.
It's pretty inspiring.
Yeah, it really is. So let's wrap things up here.
Okay.
With a question for our listeners.
Right.
If you were calling the shots, what would you do? What's the best move for Ukraine, for the U.S.,
Right.
for the whole damn world?
It's a tough one.
Yeah.
No easy answers here.
There really aren't.
It's a complicated mess, and any decision is going to have consequences.
Right.
But hey, that's what makes it interesting, right?
I guess so.
It's a real-life geopolitical thriller.
Except
people are actually dying.
Yeah, that's the part that sucked. Well, thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the shitstorm that is the Ukraine-Russia war.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Stay informed, stay engaged, and for fuck's sakes, stay hopeful. We're all in this together, folks.